Hello, bienvenido a Cuba. This is a guide on how to travel to Cuba solo or with a friend on a budget as a U.S. citizen. I recently traveled to Cuba solo for the first time and I had an amazing experience. I've been trying to get there for years, but due to the restrictions of the U.S. embargo, it was not possible until recently. After I returned, many have asked, how do you travel to Cuba by yourself under the current U.S. embargo restrictions? Now, these are individuals just like me that would prefer to avoid the limitations of costly group tours and cruises. So this prompted me to put together this detailed presentation on everything you need to know on how to travel to Cuba solo or with a friend on a budget. I've also included important tips and insights on how to easily navigate throughout Cuba when you arrive. So thank you very much for participating in this video presentation. In the end of the video, should you still have questions, I have provided my email contact to ask any questions or concerns you may have. Okay, let's get started. So the big question: can Americans travel to Cuba independently or with a friend under the current U.S. embargo restrictions? And the answer is a resounding yes. President Obama eased restrictions in 2015, allowing for the first time in more than 50 years Americans to legally travel to Cuba. But the big question is, how do you travel to Cuba if there are still restrictions? Well, there are now 12 categories of approved U.S. travel to Cuba. You must select one of the 12 categories. Don't worry, this is the easy part. I'm going to provide all 12 categories on the next page and tell you which one to select. And here are the 12 categories. And the only one you need to select is the bolded one, support for the Cuban people. Here it is again, just to reinforce, the only one that you need to travel to Cuba solo is support for the Cuban people. What it means, as noted through the U.S. Treasury Department, this is what it indicates on the website under support for the Cuban people. So these are the requirements. It looks a little bit complicated and ambiguous, but I'm going to make this easy. I'm going to simplify it. One of the key things that you can extract from this information, the most important thing, is that you're always going to want to promote and support private industry, private organizations, private individuals. The government wants you to stay away from promoting or supporting governmental organizations, and I'll explain that in more detail. So here it is simplified. So the first thing you want to do is you want to declare the category when booking your flight. You can book a flight online in the US now, and the airlines will ask you to simply select the category. You're going to select support for the Cuban people. Secondly, you want to stay at a casa particular private home. There are over 2,000 listings on Airbnb, which is a preferred method of booking a place to stay. You want to eat at local private restaurants, also called paladares. And you want to support individuals, artists, and private businesses. Let's take a closer look at each of these. A casa particular private home. You are automatically supporting the Cuban people by staying at their home. Airbnb, again, is the preferred method of booking a casa particular. They currently provide over 2,000 listings in Havana alone. Casa particulars provide an amazing breakfast daily, drinks upon request, and other meals. When you choose to eat and or drink in the home, you are paying for the service and the food, which is supporting the Cuban people. Anytime you engage in discussion with your host is educational and also falls under support for the Cuban people. You want to eat at paladares, or private restaurants. When you eat at a paladares, you are supporting the Cuban people. All Casa Particulares have hosts or families that will provide you a list of paladares. There are many amazing private restaurant options throughout Cuba. You won't be disappointed. When you purchase a cerveza or a mojito at a paladar, or a pub, or even a Casa Particular, you will be supporting the Cuban people. Private shops, individuals, and artists. Support the Cuban people by purchasing goods and gifts from individuals, artists, and private businesses. Purchase gifts from local private shops, artists, and individuals, and you will be supporting the Cuban people. Take private courses like salsa lessons that start at $12, cooking lessons, tours with historians, guided cruises through Havana in a '57 Chevy, all fall under support for the Cuban people. By simply doing what you would normally do on vacation, eating, drinking, meeting new people, learning about the culture, and purchasing gifts all fall under support for the Cuban people. Now this is important. You must keep all receipts and simply document each day what you did in a journal or itinerary. I took a notebook and indicated each day how I supported the Cuban people in case U.S. Customs asked upon my return. Here's a hint. They didn't ask at all, and I've not heard of any cases where they have. But keep a record to ensure you do what is required of your trip to Cuba. Here is a sample of an itinerary, which is an excellent option to document everything you do throughout the course of the day. It's a great record and resource that you can provide to U.S. Customs if they ask. So again, you want to either keep a journal or an itinerary. The requirement is that you need to hold on to this for 5 years. I, again, used a notebook to keep a journal of my activities each day, and I tucked it away on my bookshelf when I returned. You can choose to utilize an itinerary instead of a journal, similar to the sample on the previous page. Documenting your activities each day not only will fulfill the requirements under the Support for the Cuban People category, but it will also preserve your memories of your Cuba adventure that you can always reflect back on. The current restrictions require you keep your journal or itinerary and receipts for a total of 5 years. It may seem like a hassle, but just tuck it away in a safe place with your receipts when you return. It's that simple. Now it's time to book your flight. You can book it online now in the US. I used Google Flights and it was extremely easy. After you book your flight, you will need to obtain a Cuban tourist visa through the carrier you chose. There's a sample of the Cuban visa on the next page. Here it is. And that's what it looks like. Here is a breakdown of the visa cost. Now, even though it's the same Cuban tourist visa, each airline charges a different price. So I break it down based on the airline that you're flying, and this is based on June of 2018. Filling out your visa, you want to use a blue or black pen. Fill out both sides the same way. Pay particular attention to the date of birth. Cuban visas ask for the day of your birth first rather than the month. For example, see below. If you make a mistake, you'll be required to pay for another visa. So please take your time. Cuba is cash only for U.S. citizens. Do not let this scare you. Americans can still not use credit or debit cards due to the embargo. But don't worry, Cuba is extremely safe. Most Casa Particulars have lockboxes. Cuba is extremely affordable, so you do not need to take a lot of cash. You can get by easily on 30 bucks a day. If you want to live large, budget about 50 bucks a day. Here's a little insight on how to budget for gifts and souvenirs. Shirts cost approximately $10 to $15 depending on where you purchase them from. They have unique wooden boxes. They're very popular. They're homemade wooden boxes, very beautiful, some with Cuban flags. Those cost from anywhere between $2 and $15. You can get a case of cigars. Cohiba cigars are from 100 to 150 depending on where you buy. If you're a good negotiator, sometimes a little bit below that margin. Take $100 bills, which is the preferred bill in Cuba, when exchanging to Cuban currency, and it also reduces the number of bills you will need to carry. Here are some friendly TSA boarding reminders. Okay, any liquids or gels such as shampoo, toothpaste, gel, conditioner must be placed within the luggage you check in if the containers are larger than 3.4 ounces. Now you can carry on any liquid or gel that is in a travel size container no larger than 3.4 ounces. You must also fit all those containers in one 1 quart sized clear plastic Ziploc bag. I found a TSA carry-on packet with 5 containers at Target, which made this process simple. Must-have apps to download on phone before you leave. Most importantly, if you want to communicate with loved ones, download IMO. It is the preferred video calling app in Cuba and works well on their developing Wi-Fi service. Others, such as Skype and Facebook Messenger, are more data intensive and tend to not function as well. I used IMO and it worked brilliantly. Secondly, Google Translate. Make sure to download the Spanish language to use offline. You will be without internet most of the trip. I found this actually refreshing, but anytime you get stuck and need to communicate something in Spanish, all you have to do is open the app, type it in, and it will translate it into Spanish for you. And thirdly, maps.me. This is a Cuban offline map. You can download this map onto your phone and it will indicate an entire map of Havana. All of the restaurants, all of the museums, and all of the pubs and streets. It's very extensive and it's a must-have while navigating through Havana. Now it's time. You are ready to fly to the beautiful island of Cuba. So first, when you arrive, you have to exchange your money. There are 2 Cuban currencies called cuc and cup. Cuc is the currency used by all tourists. 1 cuc is the equivalent to $1, so it makes it really simple. Cup is the currency of the Cuban people. You will not need cup. Now there is a 3% tax and an additional 10% tax on exchanging U.S. currency to cuc. This means that when you exchange $100 at the airport, you will receive $87 in cucs. Here's an important tip. Most casas that you stay at will know reliable individuals that can exchange U.S. to cucs at a rate of 92 to 95 cucs per 100 U.S. dollars. This is a much better rate. A taxi to your casa. A taxi will cost no more than 35 cucs to Havana Vieja, Central Havana, or Vedado. Those are the 3 locations that tourists stay in Havana. I paired up with a couple I met on the plane and we split the cost. Your casa can also arrange to pick you up as well if you would like. The internet. There are Wi-Fi hotspots throughout Cuba. When you arrive to Cuba, ask your host where the hotspots are to connect. Some hosts do have internet, but very, very few, and they can often identify the areas in the city of Havana where you can walk to connect to the Wi-Fi. You will also need to purchase an internet card through your host or an ETE CSA station, usually for 2 or 3 kooks, to access the internet and Wi-Fi hotspots. The card looks like this. The back of the internet card, there are 2 numbers provided. One is the login number, the other is the password, which you will have to scratch off to view. It looks like this. Once you connect to the Wi-Fi offered at the hotspot or your casa, a page will open requesting the 2 numbers be entered. After you enter the 2 numbers, select Submit or Enter, and you will be connected. Unfortunately, each time you reconnect, you will have to re-enter the 2 numbers. Most internet cards give you an hour of internet service, and when this runs out, your internet will simply stop working, and you'll have to purchase another card. So here are some recommendations on places to stay. My highest recommendation goes to Graciella's B&B Boutique. It's where I stayed. It is perfectly located in the historic part of Havana Vieja. It's in close proximity to pubs, restaurants, and shops. They also have 2 terraces, which is ideal for meeting other travelers from all over the world. Las Maletas is another really beautiful B&B house or casa particular that's nearby, and it offers similar amenities. It has balconies with views of the street, and they provide guidance on where to go. But what you want to do is make sure you do your due diligence in searching through Airbnb. It's actually fun because there are so many wonderful places to stay, and they provide images, and they offer the ability to contact the host and ask questions about their place. And I found that the hosts would respond primarily within a day, and I'd have a series of questions because I did a lot of research before I went. So do your due diligence in exploring your options through Airbnb. You won't be disappointed. So here are some recommendations that I have for restaurants. These are the places that I ate in Havana, and they were absolutely wonderful. The first one, I can't even pronounce it. I had a difficult time pronouncing it while there and still do. It's the El Chanchulero, and they offer phenomenal shrimp, rice, and a salad that was just outstanding. And it was, I think I paid like $5.50 for the meal, but it was absolutely outstanding. And that also included a frozen drink, so it was outstanding. Art Pub is fantastic. El Dundee is fantastic. O'Reilly Restaurant, La Familia, and the El Cafe and Restaurant Van Ven. All of these are all within walking distance in the historic part of Havana Vieja. There are, however, an abundance of incredible restaurants throughout Cuba and throughout Havana. There's 3 main sections: Vedado, Centro Havana, and the historic part of Havana. It's quite expansive, but there are an abundance of options. You will not be disappointed. Just do your research and you will identify some really terrific places to eat. These are some recommendations on must-visit places in Havana. Plaza Vieja is in the historic part of Havana, and it is absolutely stunning. The plaza comes to life at night. Every evening there's live music. The people start dancing in the plaza. There are people moving around. It's just filled with a lot of fun and incredible energy. It's a place to see, and a lot of people return to Plaza Vieja almost every night. A lot of people that travel to Cuba. It's a very special plaza, and it's a must see. Plaza de la Cathedral is another gorgeous must see plaza in the old part of Havana. Fusterlandia is a community where an artist named Fustar, who was like this famous artist, became well known for turning this community into this. He's covered homes and gates and walls in mosaics and painted mosaics that are absolutely stunningly beautiful. And he's become internationally recognized and known for the change that has occurred throughout this community. And people visit it, and tourists visit it every day. It's actually free to walk through the community and walk through the homes and walk through his little home and art area that highlights a lot of the work that he has done and some of the work that he is working on. So it's a really interesting and special place. Fabrica de Tabacos, or it's also called FAC. It's an old factory that was converted into this just tremendously large art community, and they offer all kinds of performing arts. There's galleries filled with artwork, paintings. There's restaurants. It's just an absolute wonderful place to visit and see. Almacenes, San Jose. It's a large market. Anytime you need to go shopping for anything in Havana, it is the place to go. You will find all kinds of shirts, hats, anything you can think of. They have it at this large market. The best place to visit to go get souvenirs is El Mecenas, San Jose. Hotel Inglaterra's rooftop bar is special because it gives you a view of Havana that's just absolutely spectacular, especially at night. And they have live music, and you can have a mojito, and you are just in a space where you are taking in the beauty of Havana. Fayed James is a bookstore, and it offers a variety of books that you could find that you cannot find in the United States. So that's what makes it special, is that there's a lot of books in communist Cuba that you could purchase at the Fayed James bookstore that you would not be able to obtain or get a hold of here in the United States. So it's a must visit. It's a really fascinating place to see. So here are some final tips. Okay, these are the things you want to remember to do. Create a journal or itinerary of places you visit and support each day, and remember to keep the receipts. Hold on to your journal and itinerary for 5 years upon your return. And make sure you have fun. Cuba is a lot of fun. Drink a mojito from the country that invented them. Support private individuals, restaurants, and pubs, and remember to ask for the receipts. Enjoy, enjoy, enjoy. You will love Cuba. So that concludes this presentation. Should you have any questions, please email me at adventurefreaks@yahoo.com. I will be sure to respond to your questions within 24 hours. So if you have a series of questions or concerns before you depart for Cuba, please email me. and I will get back with you again within 24 hours. Thank you so much for participating in this presentation, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you have a terrific and amazing trip to Cuba. Thank you.